Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today. And though you've come through many obstacles.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to episode 14 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stone Ocean. So yeah, we're here with another episode now that we have returned to this series after such a long wait. And last time we came back to things with an Hermes episode, which is always appreciated. It was a good start, nothing like amazing, nothing phenomenal or groundbreaking, but a good start. Kicked us off with like some more depth added to Hermes, which is definitely what I like to see. We find out that she purposefully got herself sent to this prison as a way to get to Sportsmax, because Sportsmax killed her older sister. See, after their mother's death, Gloria started to take care of Hermes and started to act as this sort of mother figure to her while they continued to work at this restaurant that their father owned. Eventually, Hermes started to kind of go through this rebellious phase, you could say. And because of it, she was deciding, in a weird way, that her rebellious phase would be going to college and shit. You know, like, stuff, like, you think of a rebellious phase more like going, like dropping out of college and, like, going to start a rock band, a garage band or something, and it's like, no, but in this, it's like, no, her rebellious phase is leaving the employ of her father's business, the restaurant or whatever, and going to college and everything instead. And kind of, I wouldn't say abandoning her family, but just trying to, you know, make a life of her own separate from it. However, during this, her sister ends up, like, accidentally overhearing a situation between Sportsmax and these other people he's messing with. This ends up accidentally getting him to notice Hermes as she's leaving, and so Gloria, in order to save her sister, takes the attention on herself, which causes Sportsmax to kill her. Because she overheard and oversaw what was going on and everything. So she was, I guess it kind of looked like, looking back on it, like she was drowned, maybe. But either way, she was killed. Sportsmax was found guilty and sent to prison, and so Hermes got herself sent to prison to get revenge on him. Because despite her rebellious attitude, she still loved her sister. And on top of that, we also find out that her father also passed away. After Gloria's death, he just kind of shut down, and eventually, I think it said a sickness got him, which is like, Jesus, it's like, Hermes really lost it all in kind of one fell swoop. She lost everyone she still had. And so I can understand why she'd want revenge on this dude. But the episode shows her hunting him down in the prison, while Jolene and FF try to, like, find out what's going on and everything with her, why she's being so distant and moody lately. And she does finally track him down and sets a trap for him and succeeds in seemingly starting to take him down. But, of course, he's a stand user. We saw kind of him plotting things at the end of the last episode. So, or at the end of the last batch of episodes. So we finally get introduced to his stand, Limp Bizkit. And Limp Bizkit has an interesting ability. It seems to be able to create a pseudo stand, a sort of invisible, how would you put it? Just entity, based on nearby, what's the word? My mind is blanking. Taxidermied animals. There are some nearby taxidermied animals that Sportsmax was working on, and Limp Bizkit allows him to basically create these entities based on those animals' living forms, except they're invisible. So first he summons like this bird, right? And it's invisible, but it starts attacking Hermes. It starts pecking holes in her flesh, and trying to peck and rip out her artery, which is really uncomfortable. Shit like that. And then after the bird's taken out, a taxidermied alligator just happens to also be around. So it's like, oh yeah, let's bring in an alligator because Florida. Because this takes place in Florida, so why the fuck not? So they bring in an alligator next, and it's like, oh, this one's a lot more dangerous, a lot more intense, and yeah, is very much after Hermes. And we see Jolene and Foo Fighters comes in, and the alligator eats Foo Fighters' leg, and it's like, oh shit, my leg. I'm never going to get over that. That was really funny. Just the very monotonous way she said that, or they said that. It was so just humorously performed and handled. I don't even know if that was the intention. Probably not, but it was really funny. But yeah, so the fight has against Sportsmax's Limp Bizkit has really begun and everything, and I'm just wondering where this is going to go. Because honestly, if I'm being completely honest here, after the last batch of episodes, after episode 12, when Sportsmax was first like hinted at and everything, to set up for this current batch, episode 13, I wouldn't say disappointed me, but surprised me by how easily Hermes was able to, trap him like that. The setup made it seem like he was going to be this big deal, and it's like, okay, one, we're getting to him right away, which is a little surprising. But two, Hermes is just able to kind of take care of him just like that. Also, again, I kind of mentioned this last time, but he didn't seem to know, like, what Hermes was talking about when she was bringing up all the stuff about her sister and all. And it's like, does he not remember? But he also recognized the picture of Gloria there. Maybe it's one of those cases where it's just like the picture looked familiar, and it's like he didn't quite place it at first because it's like, oh, he's killed so many people, he doesn't remember everyone. Maybe it's something like stupid like that, but I don't know. It just feels weird to me. Maybe that's just me. But also the fact that he was taken out so easily, like even with his stand being something like he doesn't have to super actively work with, it's something he can more passively activate. Still, it just seems he just doesn't seem as threatening as I expected, based on the setup for him at the end of the first batch. I don't know. Maybe I was just expecting a lot more because it just seemed like it was going to be a bigger deal. to me. Maybe that's just my expectations, but excuse me. But I also just feel like this is kind of a big deal for Hermes' character. And so having Sportsmax be just kind of this almost pushover feels off. Like, even though his stand is definitely strong, it's not that impressive compared to a lot of others. I don't know. Maybe that's just, again, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me. But I just wasn't as enveloped in this so far as I feel I could have been. Comparative to other stuff, this part and everything. But there could be a lot of reasons to that, and hell, this episode might fix that, because it did show a brief flash forward at the beginning of last episode. It showed like Hermes very injured, and there's like this other woman who was like dead on the ground with her like head caved in or some shit. And it's like, okay, things might escalate pretty notably in this episode. I'm just wondering, like, what else can this stand do? Like, is it just creating these entities based off of the taxidermied animals, or is there something more? Because it just feels like, even with this alligator, who, yeah, is clearly a threat to them, I feel like with their stands, they could still take care of it easily enough. I don't feel like it's going to be that big of a threat. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how this goes. And hopefully I'm proven wrong and this ends up being a good little arc for Hermes' character. I don't know if this is going to end in this episode or if there's going to be a third part to this. I honestly can't say. But I'm very, very interested to see where this goes nonetheless. And hopefully I am impressed in the end. More so than I am currently. And I'm sure, like, even if this arc is a dud for me, I'm sure that the series going forward will still be good. It's like, even if this is a dud for me, it's like, that happens. Not everything in part 5 was great for me. Not everything in part 4 was great for me. It's just like, that happens. It's like there's enough content to where it's like not everything is going to work as perfectly as other stuff does. Excuse me. But all that being said, we are going to just get this started and hope for the best. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Following to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and it fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, like I said in the pre-thoughts, the last episode left me a little wanting. It left me not entirely disappointed, but it left me feeling like, okay, this feels almost too easy. It feels like Sportsmax is not actually the threat we thought he was. And so I was going into this episode a little worried, admittedly, that we were not going to be able to make this really feel as important and special as it should, considering it's a big deal for Hermes' character and story. And fortunately, this episode completely, like, annihilated my fears. This episode fixed everything and made it all come together. Because in this episode, we got fucking zombies. Invisible fucking zombies, too. Have we had zombies in this series since part 1? I'm trying to remember. Because part 1, zombies were actually a notable part of the... Well, part. That was actually pretty notable. Dio bringing the dead back to life. You had the likes of Bruford and all of that. Tarkus and Bruford. I was trying to remember the other guy's name. You had just generic zombies in there as well. And it's like, I'm trying to think if we had zombies since then. There were no zombies in part 2. Part 3 is the only one I'm really wondering about, because I believe part 4 and 5 didn't have any. Did part 3 have any zombies? I don't think so. I think this is the first part since part 1 that we've had zombies in. And the way it's done, like, that's really unique and interesting. So Limp Bizkit brings the dead back to life, but in an alternate, like, separate state from the body. So it's not like the bodies are actually coming back to life as zombies, but it's creating invisible zombies based around the dead bodies that already exist. We saw it happen with the bird and the alligator. The zombies were separate from the actual bodies. But it seems like the bodies were affected by... the bodies and the zombies, like, affected each other. Like, when the zombie alligator is taken out, the body of the alligator, the taxidermy body, is destroyed as well. So that's interesting in and of its own right. Which means that Sportsmax's body at the end of this is absolutely annihilated and destroyed and ripped to pieces in the sewage. So he's gone for very good. And one of the things I was worrying about and everything was the fact that Poochie was, like, you know, talking to him at the end of the last batch of episodes. And it's like, okay, that's got to be big, right? That's, like, hyping him up to be really big. And in this, we find out the context behind all of that. Like, we knew the bone was part of it, Dio's bone. But here we find out, like, okay, Poochie wanted Sportsmax to use his stand ability, Limp Bizkit, to try and bring Dio back. To create a zombie Dio from his bone. But I guess maybe the bone was just not enough. Possibly. That the bone just wouldn't have been enough, like, of a body to bring back. I don't know. He's never getting the chance to try it, so... But that's interesting. We know Poochie has this strong connection to Dio, so it's not a surprise that he would want that. I'm just curious as to where this is going to all go. It clearly has something to do with this entire thing that Dio apparently had about, like, trying to reach heaven and everything. And all of that he had accounted in that journal that is in, you know, Jotaro's memories. So it's like, I'm genuinely curious as to what they're going to do with this going forward. But let's focus on this episode for now. So, with the help of Jolene and FF, Hermes does manage to stop the alligator. Well, technically, FF was the one who actually kills it. Again. And then we come into play with Sportsmax Zombie himself. And we find out how this girl ends up getting killed. She was shown at the beginning of last episode, and it's like, okay, who's this random girl? Why is she dead? And I think we had seen her in the background during last episode. But it's like she didn't really have any role to play. Here she does. So when Sportsmax Zombie approached her, like the zombies are invisible and also can't be heard. We find that out. They can't normally communicate. They can interact with things around them, but they can't be like heard audibly by other people, which actually makes them scarier in a way. Like all of the zombies that we see in here, the zombie alligator, the bird, all the regular human zombies, they were from the perspective of Hermes, Jolene, and FF making no noise. There was nothing audibly there. We heard something as the viewers. We heard like moaning and groaning and the alligator like growling and shit. But they didn't. And that's terrifying. Like you're not only facing zombies, which are already formidable, especially in the JoJo verse, and especially an alligator zombie like shit. Not only facing zombies, not only just invisible zombies, but ones that you can't tell are coming pretty much at all. Unless you do what Jolene did and set the traps and everything. And on top of that, it's like you have just the fact that they are so aggressive and so like strongly aggressive. Like they're very aggro zombies, and that's also a threat. But we see him like after he gets out, he thinks he's gotten out of the pipe. He thinks he's alive still. He's like, oh, I got to wash this sewage off of me. Got to get a good drink to clear out my throat. And he goes up to this girl and he's like, hey, come with me to the cafe. Then we can go get our little freak on and shit. He touches her, but she can't see or hear him, of course. So she thinks it's this other dude who's near her, which Sportsmax ends up puppeting in order to try and, get her to follow him and everything. And we see him like stripping this dude, and like the dude is like doing a handstand and stuff while his like bare ass is out and all. And she's like, listen, I can get into some freaky shit, but this is a little too freaky. I just love that she made that joke, especially like right as I was thinking it too. It's really funny. But it's like, hey, nothing wrong with that. Let your freak flag fly. Just if you are experimental and like to have fun in the sack, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just I just love that they made that joke at the same time I was thinking it. But yeah, he ends up realizing he hungers for brains because he's a zombie. And he attacks her, rips her head open, and just feasts upon her. It's like, Jesus. Like, again, as I stated in the reaction, I don't know what she did to get into the prison. She could be an absolutely terrible piece of shit. I don't know. Because there are people who are sent to prison for, honestly, very little. And, honestly, false accusations and stuff. I don't know. She could be the worst piece of shit possible. But just from the no real context we have for her, and what we did see of her in this, I kind of feel bad for her. Like, just to be killed and cannibalized that suddenly, and like already in a sour mindset because of like the entire weird shit going on. It's like I feel bad for her. It's like no one deserves to be cannibalized, obviously, but geez, that's just like wow. And then Hermes has to fight him and uses her kiss to be able to do so. Uses the splitting abilities to be able to locate and target him, Sportsmax. And she does finally get her revenge. I also like the part where she's like saying like, oh, some people will say like revenge won't bring your sister back, or it won't make you happy or fulfill it. And she's like, well, fuck that. I won't be able to move on unless I take care of this. And it's like, fuck yes. Fuck yes, girl. I've never been a big fan of when people say that shit. Like, the entire cliche of revenge won't bring your loved one back, revenge won't fill the hole in your heart, it'll just, the cycle of revenge will just, make things worse. It's like, people who say that shit have never lost a loved one. Especially in this kind of circumstance. And mind you, I've never, to my knowledge, had anyone I love be killed. I've had loved ones die, but it's mostly been because of poor health and age and whatnot. With like one or two exceptions here and there. One of which being a friend who committed suicide. But even with that, it's like it's not quite the same thing, obviously. I don't even fully understand it, but I've heard so many stories from people who have gone through shit like this. I've read and listened to stories of people who have had family members killed, who have been the family of murder victims. And sometimes they can and do choose to just let mercy take control and not go too far with wanting revenge. And sometimes that works. But there's a lot of people who genuinely want vengeance and who genuinely will not be able to find peace until they get it. And it's fully understandable. And I by no means am advocating for the entire eye for an eye kind of situation here. I'm not saying that it's right to kill someone who killed someone you loved. I don't believe that that's the case. What I'm saying is that Hermes's view on this is realistic and believable. And that she has a right to feel that way. And in the case of a show like this, she has the right to take that revenge. And there's a certain point, even in real life, where it's like, if someone is honestly terrible enough, there's a point where even my sense of like, oh, you should still face your justice properly, if someone's terrible enough, even my sense of that tends to wane. Like, there are certain points where it's like, I'm not going to wish for someone's death, but if someone that terrible does die, I won't be sad about it. In fact, I'll be happy about it. I'm not going to wish for it. I'm not going to, like, say that, I'm not going to, like, beg for it or anything, or try to, like, make it happen or anything. You know what I mean. But if it does happen, I won't complain. And there are people that bad, unquestionably. But for the most part, I do believe that people should be sent to prison, even if for life, for terrible things. And that a lot of times, life imprisonment is more effective and should be more the norm than stuff like the death penalty. I still, even with this, don't believe in the death penalty. I don't think it's right. Especially with all the people who have been unjustly murdered through that. Despite being innocent. And we're just not given fair trials and we're falsely accused and everything. So, I genuinely, I'm you could say I'm mixed on this. It's like, I very much understand and even agree to Hermes's view in this with this specific case, but in real life, it's like, it's a very complex, nuanced issue that I can't really say I fully support one way or the other. It depends on the situation, the person, etc., etc. If in the case of a person like Sportsmax in real life, like a person like this who's clearly a career criminal who murdered someone close to me and everything, and is entirely unrepentant for it, it's like it's at that point, like, yeah, I would start to kind of feel like, okay, I wouldn't be upset if he died and stuff like that. Now me, I would never like try to take that revenge for myself. Like, that's just not who I am, but you get my point and everything. And I'll admit, I did tear up when Hermes was finally able to cry at the end. Like, something that she had not been able to do. Like, it didn't go too deep into this throughout these episodes, but with what she said there at the end, it all kind of came together. And it's like, after her sister's death, she never cried because she was so full of anger and vengeance. She wanted her revenge, and that consumed her. So after she finally got it, she's finally able to just mourn. She no longer has to worry about getting revenge. She can just be sad and let those emotions out. And she can just miss her sister. And that's therapeutic and really nice to see. And again, it's not even just that, but seeing Gloria's spirit come upon Hermes there, it's like, that really almost got me. Because it's like, it's ironic, because the image is Gloria's spirit coming down and resting upon Hermes' shoulders, but in reality, a weight was lifted off her shoulders. A massive weight that had been holding her down all this time. She's free. She's free of the pain, of the vengeance, of everything that had been plaguing her for all this time since her sister's death. And that's wonderful. It's wonderfully handled. I was concerned that this wouldn't be, like, it wouldn't feel big enough considering what we got in the last episode. But again, this episode wrapped things up perfectly in that regard. And Hermes' revenge felt, because of how this episode handled things, right. It felt good. It felt well handled. And Sportsmax, like, he wasn't a major villain, but again, his purpose for what we saw was explained. For what we saw at the end of the last batch of episodes. And I'm good with that. We brought it all back to how episode 13 started. And whatever Jolene saw in Sportsmax's disc, which we actually don't know yet, has motivated her even further. And that in and of itself is very fascinating. And we even got explanation for the fact that it seemed like Sportsmax didn't understand or remember what Hermes was talking about. In the last episode, he seemed so fucking confused. Like, he recognized the photo, he definitely did. But at the same time, it's like when Hermes is, like, going on about it, he's like, almost like, what are you talking about? And it's like, wait, what? And that really threw me off. But in this episode, it actually showed that he just has a bad memory. That he forgets things. And there are people like that. Who just have really bad memories and will just randomly forget things. That was actually shown in here. It actually explained that. And it's like, I am so happy it did that. because otherwise that would have been a hang up I still had. And because it felt so fucking weird. It just felt so fucking weird. So I'm really happy that Araki put that in there. Just that little detail. Yeah, this episode saved this little Hermes mini arc for me, and actually made me kind of love it. Again, the zombie thing going on was fantastic and really cool, and it's like, I didn't even think of that last time, you know? It's like, I understood that it's like we were bringing in these entities based on these, you know, dead bodies, these dead animal bodies, but it's like I never put together it's like zombies. It makes so much sense, and it's literally zombies too. It's just like they go straight up showing that it's a literal zombie thing, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant, like down to the eating brains and everything. I love that. I just love that. I've talked about before on this channel with other things. It's like zombie media tends to be something I'm kind of on the fence with, because sometimes it can be just really generic and boring. But there's been some zombie things that I really like. I really love Train to Busan and Seoul Station. And Peninsula was good. It wasn't as good as the other two, but it was still good. And I've watched, as you know, the Return of the Living Dead movies on here, at least the first two. And I enjoyed those. So it's like, there is some zombie media I like. And it's like, this would be up there. This would be one of them. And that's cool to me. And obviously, we know at the end of this, Hermes will be okay. She's injured and everything, but she'll be okay. Jolene is in solitary for the time being. FF is somewhere else, we don't know where, but they'll be okay as well. Yeah, we know things will work out. Except for that one female prisoner. She's very much dead. Unfortunately, I feel so bad for her. But yeah, I think it's genuinely just interesting how this was handled. And yeah, I very much have no idea where this is going to go now. Because obviously that hurts Poochie's plans a little bit, but doesn't necessarily stop them completely. Who knows what's going to happen next? But I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty excited. I think this goes up to episode 24, I want to say. So we've still got a good ways ahead of us. Still got about 10 episodes. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be a good set. I think it's going to start escalating. Like the first batch definitely was kind of introducing us to everything, getting us to know the characters, to get the setup for the villain, and even just our main group of Joe Bros, who in this case are Joe Gals. Just getting, well, and you know, Foo Fighters, who's a NB, but still, because they're a sentient colony of plankton inhabiting a corpse. So fun, right? But yeah, it's just, I really think that this batch of episodes is going to go hard. And obviously the final batch, when we get that, is going to go even harder. I'm excited for what's going to happen. I'm excited to see more of our crew in action. I want to see more weather report. There's the other guy who showed up very briefly. It didn't say anything and just kind of pieced out. He showed up at the same time as weather report. I think his name is Anasui, because I think I've heard other people like mentioning him before and all. But we also have the kid as well, whose name I can't remember. We have him. He's got to come back. Emporio, that's it. I gotta remember that because it's like Emporio Ivankov from One Piece. That's my way of remembering it. Would that count as a mnemonic device? I don't think so. I don't think that's a mnemonic device. Either way. But yeah, we gotta get the follow up on the Speedwagon Foundation and Jotaro. There's a lot of stuff that still needs to be brought together. So I think this batch of episodes is going to go pretty hard, and it's going to get progressively more so as it goes along. It's going to like escalate pretty quickly and pretty hard here, and I'm all for that. So all of that being said, tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stone Ocean? And for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.